Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, but remember, context is everything. My name is John Michael Monroy. I am the founder and CEO of Context is Everything Media Network, and this is another installment of The Ambient Classroom. Now, this is a segment wherein I read this world history textbook cover to cover. We're on page 140, 150 of 1007. That puts us in ancient Rome. And also, it gives me the opportunity as founder and CEO of Context is Everything Media Network to develop my context as an individual. Remind myself of some history topics that I learned in school, I taught as a teacher, and now I'm just refreshing. So why don't we just jump right back in, Yesterday, we did the first part of the second section of Roman Empire, and I called that first section the decline of the Republic. Not the empire, the Republic. And this is briefly what I wrote down. Carthage was a major enemy of the Roman Republic. They had an army led by Hannibal, which was a formidable opponent to the Romans. Overall, that conflict between Rome and Carthage lasted between 264 and 146 BC. Upon the Roman victory, they killed or enslaved all of the Carthaginians in Carthage and salted their land so they couldn't grow any food for those who still continued to live there and settle. And then, I got to plug the computer and I realized I didn't set the charger. So they enslaved the Carthaginians, and this created some turmoil in Rome, which led to that fall of the Republic and the rise of the empire. The latifundia. These are, in essence, what we know in American history as plantations. These were farms run by slaves. The slaves that they just gotten a huge influx of from their conquest of Carthage. So the latifundias created problem because they really cut off the income of regular farmers. Those regular farmers moved to cities, and those cities became overpopulated and unable to sustain the people, which led to problems in the cities, as you would imagine, with overpopulation, not enough work. So the tribunes came in. Remember, those tribunes are the voice in government of the voice in government of the, what are they called? Plebeians. The plebeians, who were the workers, the artisans. I don't think the soldiers are included in that, but the plebeians, the low class of society. The tribunes are their voice. So the tribunes tried to help their cause in this time of turmoil when their farming work was stripped from the plebeian case because of the slave labor. And so the tribunes tried to help. The Gracchus brothers, Gracchus, the Gracchus brothers tried to create some reform to help the plebeians with social programs. The Gracchus brothers, in a related story, were murdered in the streets by senators' hired thugs. So the senators who wanted the status quo to sustain itself murdered the Gracchus brothers in the streets as a show of force that they're going to continue to have their way. At least that's what this textbook says. What do I know? Okay. And then we talked about Julius Caesar. So how about we pick up with Julius Caesar, and we might even get into the next section because there's only a page and a half left here. How about we start with Caesar's reforms, and we'll go through from there. So I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but that's all right. It's the ambient classroom. We're just we're here for some ambiance. Between 48 BC and 44 BC, Caesar pushed through a number of reforms intended to deal with Rome's many problems. He launched a program of public works to employ jobless and gave public land to the poor. He also reorganized the government of the provinces and granted Roman citizenship to more people. Caesar's most lasting reform was the introduction of a new calendar based on Egyptian knowledge. The Julian calendar, as it was later called, was used in Western Europe for over 1,600 years, with minor changes. It is still our calendar today. Assassination and civil wars, subheading under Julius Caesar. Caesar's enemies worried that he planned to make himself king of Rome. In order to save the Republic, they plotted against him. In 44 BC, as Caesar arrived in the Senate, his enemies stabbed him to death. The death of Julius Caesar plunged Rome into a new round of civil wars. Mark Antony, Caesar's chief general, and Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew, joined forces to hunt down the murderers. The two men soon quarreled, however, setting off bitter struggles for power. In 31 BC, Octavian finally defeated Antony and his powerful ally, Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. Roman Empire and Roman peace. The Senate gave the triumphant Octavian the title Augustus, or Exalted One, and declared him Principe, or First Citizen. Although he was careful not to call himself king, a title that Romans had hated since Etruscan times, Augustus exercised absolute power and named his successor, just as kings would do. Under Augustus, who ruled from 31 BC to 14 AD, the 500-year republic came to an end. Romans did not know at the time, but a new age had dawned, the age of the Roman Empire. Interesting. I'm going to read that one more time because I want to get it better. Under Augustus, who ruled from 31 BC to AD 14, the 500-year-old republic came to an end. Romans did not know it at the time, but a new age had dawned, the age of the Roman Empire. So I guess that's the naming of rulers, the monarchy in essence of Rome makes it an empire as opposed to the republic, which was more regulated in the sense of non-family rule, I guess. Subheading, a stable government. Through firm but moderate policies, Augustus laid the foundation for a stable government. Although he left the Senate in place, Augustus created an efficient, well-trained civil service to enforce the laws. High-level jobs were open to men of talent, regardless of their class. In addition, he cemented the allegiance of cities and provinces in Rome by allowing them a large measure of self-government. Augustus undertook economic reforms, too. To make the tax system more fair, he ordered a census, or population count, to be taken by the empire. He set up a postal service and issued new coins to make trade easier. He put the jobless to work, building roads and temples, and sent others to farm in the land. The government that Augustus organized functioned well for 200 years. Still, a serious problem kept arising. Who would rule after an emperor died? Romans did not accept the idea of power passing automatically from father to son. As a result, the death of an emperor often led to intrigue and violence. Bad emperors and good emperors, subheading, under Roman Empire and Roman peace. Bad emperors and good emperors. Not all of Augustus's successors were great rulers. Indeed, some were weak and incompetent. Two early emperors, Caligula and Nero, were downright evil and perhaps insane. Caligula, for example, appointed his favorite horse as consul. Nero viciously persecuted Christians and was even blamed for setting a great fire that destroyed much of Rome. Between AD 96 and AD 180, AD 180, AD 180, the empire benefited from the rule of series of good emperors. The Emperor Hadrian, for example, codified Roman law, making it the same for all provinces. He also had soldiers build a wall across Britain to hold back attackers from the non-Roman north. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who read philosophy while on military campaigns, was close to Plato's ideal of a philosopher king. His meditations show his stoic philosophy and committed duty. His meditations, which is a book, show his stoic philosophy and commitment to duty. Hour by hour, resolve firmly to do what comes to hand with the correct and natural dignity. That's a quote from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius in a Scottish accent. Subheading: The Pax Romana. The Pax Romana. The 200-year span that began with Augustus and ended with Marcus Aurelius is known as the period of the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. During that time, Roman rule brought peace, order, unity, and prosperity to lands stretching from the Euphrates River in the east to Britain in the west, an area approximately equal in size to the continental United States. During the Pax Romana, Roman legions maintained and protected the roads, and Roman fleets chased pirates from the seas. Trade flowed freely, and from distant lands in Africa and Asia, Egyptian farmers in the Nile Valley supplied Romans with grain. From other parts of Africa came ivory and gold, as well as lions and other wild animals that were used in public entertainments. From India came spices, cotton, and precious stones. Trade caravans traveled along the Silk Road, bringing silk and other goods from China. People, too, moved easily within the Roman Empire, spreading ideas and knowledge, especially the advances of the Hellenistic East. As you will read, ideas from Greece and Judea would have tremendous impact on Rome and the Western world. Would have tremendous impact on Rome and the Western world. Subheading: Bread and circuses. Throughout the empire, rich and poor alike loved spectacular entertainment. At the Circus Maximus, Rome's largest race course, chariots thundered around an oval course, making dangerously tight turns at either end. Fans bet feverishly on their favorite teams, the Reds, Greens, Blues, or Whites, and successful charioteers were hailed as heroes. Gladiator contests were even more popular. Many gladiators were slaves who had been trained to fight. In the arena, they battled one another, either singly or in groups. Crowds cheered a skilled gladiator, and a good fighter might even win his freedom. But if a gladiator made a poor showing, the crowd turned thumbs down, a signal that he should be killed. To the emperors who paid for them with the taxes they collected from the empire, these amusements were a way to pacify the city's restless mobs. In much the same spirit, the government provided free grain to feed the poor. Critics warned against this policy of bread and circuses, but few listened. During the Pax Romana, the general prosperity hid underlying social and economic problems. Later, Roman emperors, however, would face problems that could not be solved with bread and circuses. And that's the end of that. 5 minutes to go. Continue on or write a sticky note. Leave in the comments below if I should continue on with 5 minutes to go or just write my sticky note now. I'm going to continue on. Tell me how it feels. Section 3. The Roman Achievement. Setting the scene. This is section 3 of chapter 6, the Roman Achievement. Setting the scene. Marcus Tullius Cicero was a philosopher, politician, and passionate defender of law. As the Republic declined, he attacked ambitious men such as Julius Caesar. When Caesar came to power, however, he forgave Cicero, noting that it was more glorious to have enlarged the limits of the Roman mind than the boundaries of Roman rule. Romans such as Cicero and Caesar both had lasting impact. Through civil war and conquest, Roman generals carried the achievements of Roman civilization to distant lands. Yet the civilization that developed was not simply Roman. Rather, it blended Greek, Hellenistic, and Roman achievements. Greco-Roman civilization. In its early days, Rome absorbed ideas from Greek colonists in southern Italy, and it continued to borrow heavily from Greek culture after it conquered Greece. To the Romans, emerging from their villages, Greek art, literature, philosophy, and scientific genius represented the height of cultural achievement. Their admiration never wavered, leading the Roman poet Horace to note, "Greece has conquered her rude conqueror." The Romans adapted Greek and Hellenistic achievements, just as the Greeks had once absorbed the ideas from Egypt and the Fertile Crescent. The blending of Greek, Hellenistic, and Roman traditions produced what is known as Greco-Roman civilization. Trade and travel during the Pax Romana helped spread this vital new civilization. Pax Romana, Roman peace. Literature, philosophy, and history is the next heading, and this is going to be our final heading of the day. In the field of literature, the Romans owed a great debt to the Greeks. Many Romans spoke Greek and imitated Greek styles in prose and poetry. Still, the greatest Roman writers used Latin to create their own literature. Poetry. In his epic poem, the Aeneid, A-E-N-E-I-D, Aeneid, Virgil tried to show that Rome's past was heroic, Virgil tried to show that Rome's past was as heroic as that of the Greek. He linked his epic to Homer's work by telling how Aeneas Aeneas, escaped from Troy to found Rome. Virgil wrote the Aeneid soon after Augustus came to power. He hoped it would arouse patriotism and help unite Rome after years of civil wars. Other poets used verse to satirize or make fun of Roman society. Horace's satires were gentle, using playful wit to attack human folly, juvenile and marital. Juvenal and Martial were more biting. Martial's poems were so harsh that he had to use fictitious names to protect himself from retribution. So Juvenal is a guy, a writer, and so is Martial. And Martial had to use different names so that he wouldn't get in trouble. Okay, 2 more paragraphs. Roman historians pursued their own theme, the rise and fall of Roman power. Like the poet Virgil, the historian Livy sought to arouse patriotic feelings and restore traditional Roman virtues by recalling images of Rome's heroic past. In his History of Rome, Livy recounted tales of great heroes such as Horatius and Cincinnatus. Another historian, Tacitus, wrote bitterly about Augustus and his successors, who he felt had destroyed Roman liberty. He admired the simple culture of the Germans who lived in Rome's northern frontier and would later invade the empire. Philosophy, and this is it. Romans borrowed much of their philosophy from the Greeks. The Hellenistic philosophy of Stoicism impressed the Roman thinkers like the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Stoics stressed the importance of duty and acceptance of one's fate. They also showed concern for the well-being of all people, an idea that would be reflected in Christian teachings. See section 4 of this chapter. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything.